big hand for errors, applause for mistakes. Without them we wouldn't be here. Let's hear it for inexactitude, for imprecision, bravo. For fudging it, hip hip, 3 cheers. DNA of twisted double helix fame is an expert at that self-replication game. But once
welcome to another edition of Peaceworker Radio, coming to you from WCCR, Voice and Vision of Cambridge, Cambridge, Massachusetts, 438 Mass Avenue, here at the studios of Cambridge Community Television. This is the beginning of a new epic here at CCTV. The show today is going to be 1 hour long, as are other shows on this station at this time. We're excited about the new era. We are less excited about the fact that we will have less time to present our arguments and our structure. Without further ado, let me say what today's program is about. The primary in Massachusetts in 2016 between the Democratic candidates, the only ones that this program is actually interested in, for a reason that's clear, was interrupted on several different occasions during the primary election by Marty Walsh, present mayor of the city of Boston, and Bill Clinton, ex-president of the United States, who interrupted and was caught on film at 4 different polling sites, and apparently intentionally disturbing the voting of those interested casting their ballots in the primary election. This is a violation of Massachusetts law. A number of complaints were filed formally at the Office of the Attorney General. Maura Healey, my recent conversations with staff at the Attorney General's office was that there was no interest to pursue these complaints. That's unfortunate and has led to this program in which we are publicly calling for lawsuits to be initiated by any Massachusetts resident complaining about that reality. Everyone who lives in the state of Massachusetts who is of legal age to file a complaint, and I believe everyone in Massachusetts, a resident of Massachusetts, can file such a complaint concerning this. The idea is to get many individuals to file complaints against the President of the United States, against the mayor of the city of Boston, for intentionally interfering with the voting process during the primary here in Massachusetts. A serious offense. Marty Walsh has stated he didn't see anything wrong. He couldn't imagine that anything was wrong. Bill Clinton is typical in the Clinton fashion. They have no idea whatsoever that anything they could have possibly done in any way could have interfered with anybody's rights, and it's typical of presidents of the United States, including in this case Barack Obama, in many instances, believe that they are above the law. That's not unusual, because the police in the United States believe that they are above the law. It's clear because they believe in killing blacks. That's completely above the law. And obviously the cities are in which these police officers work, their supervisors, the attorney generals, the courts, systems all believe that the police are completely within their bounds to kill blacks in situations in which there can be no question that the police were in the wrong. And the reason behind all of this is clear. The Supreme Court has issued a decision saying that police have the right, legally, the right to kill anyone whom, or from whom, or by whom the police officer doing the killing feels to have been threatened. In other words, if a police officer feels he's being threatened, his life or his welfare is being threatened, he has the right to kill that individual, regardless of whether or not they are armed, unarmed, whether or not they are fleeing the scene or not fleeing the scene, whether or not they're 8 years old or 9 years old or 10 years old or 85 years old, whether or not they are laying flat, whether or not they are standing up, kneeling, swimming, makes no difference. This is a ridiculous Supreme Court ruling. There are other Supreme Court rulings that are equally ridiculous, such as Citizens United, but we are, as a nation, confronted with absolutely ridiculous Supreme Court rulings. But we're not speaking about the Supreme Court rulings today. We're speaking about the interference in Massachusetts, at the Massachusetts primary in 2016 by the President of the United States and by the Mayor, Marty Walsh, in interference and subjectively caught on camera interfering with the voting process at several precincts during this election. Thanks for the introduction. We'll be speaking more after this message. Cambridge Community Television, Cambridge, Massachusetts. Our program is about to begin. Thanks for your interest in it. 4/4/2016, today's date, Square Root Day. Thanks for joining us here at Cambridge Community Television. We here at Cambridge Community Television are calling for an end to Bill Clinton's boycotting, interrupting, and violating of election laws in reference to his trying to support his wife, Hillary Clinton, in her bid for the nomination in the Democratic primaries. That's going to be the subject of our program this evening, and we would like to begin by calling for the prosecution of Bill Clinton and Marty Walsh for crimes in Massachusetts in violation of the voting laws of the state of Massachusetts, which they have violated and which are on camera and have been documented. We'll begin by reading part of a report in reference to these violations. In Boston, Bill Clinton was caught along with Mayor Marty Walsh on video campaigning for his wife Hillary Clinton right outside the polling places. The fact that two or more persons were involved in the apparent crime leads to the potential prosecution of Bill Clinton and Marty Walsh for other crimes, The statutory crime of conspiracy generally is defined as a scheme or agreement of two or more people to violate public policy or law. A requirement is an act in furtherance of the conspiracy, and actually committing the crime suffices for that act. Conspiracy is often prosecuted as a felony. It was not just that Bill Clinton happened to illegally drop by one of the polling places with the mayor to campaign for his wife. He went to 4 polling places in the Boston area and even took his campaigning inside, making it appear clear that he intended to violate the law. In Boston, voters were obstructed and prevented from voting by Bill Clinton and those accompanying him for hours. Some Sanders supporters were intimidated and told they would have to partially undress and turn their shirts inside out before they could vote. Every obstruction of each individual obstructed event would have been a new crime. By the time the apparent crimes committed against each of those prevented from voting are cumulatively added together, we would likely be looking for a lifetime sentence for someone not above the law. Bill Clinton is no stranger to the law. He is a disbarred attorney. His wife is also an attorney and theoretically learned something in law school and in her years as a practicing law. Criminal law is required subject in law school. As Bill was doing the campaigning on behalf of his wife, Hillary Clinton, this pulls her into the crime as a probable principal and co-conspirator. Bill Clinton is not running for office, so it would make no sense for him to campaign. The sense is that he would further the interests of his wife in becoming the presidential candidate of the Democratic Party. Instantly, observers pointed out that Bill Clinton had committed crimes, including probable felonies with regards to his actions in Boston. The petition calling for the arrest and prosecution of Bill Clinton quickly received more than 100,000 signatures, mostly from Democrats, who were offended by the apparent criminal activity on behalf of one of their presidential candidates by a one-time president of the United States. There will be some profanity at this moment, and perhaps it would make sense to recognize this. What the fuck is going on here in Massachusetts? This makes absolutely no sense to anyone. How is it that a president of the United States can apparently interrupt the voting procedures in Massachusetts, along with the mayor, the city mayor of the city of Boston, and run roughshod over several different polling places at the time of a primary election in a hotly contested state, the state of Massachusetts. Apparently, Marty Walsh is interested in hanging his star on that of the Clinton administration, should she get elected, and that's what Marty Walsh is banking on. Of course, that Clinton is elected and remembers him winning the election for her in Massachusetts and then appointing him to a prominent position, or after he has left the office of mayor, then promoting his career. This is precisely the attitude that we have in Massachusetts, and precisely the national attitude, and this is the question why Bernie Sanders is interested in stopping this type of politics in the United States. It's graft, it's illegal, it's in violation of statutes, and it's being done by people and personages who benefit from these type of things during the election. The crisis, of course, is that these things usually happen in third world countries, in Africa and South America. But this is happening in the United States at a time in a hotly congested primary situation in Massachusetts. But apparently, Clinton is above the law. Marty Walsh is above the law as city mayor. And this is taking place probably, if it took place, and that's the next part of our argument. Apparently, this is taking place in several different communities. Caucus violations caught on video included also Clinton's campaign counting of votes not actually present and not actually voting in the caucus. B, counting votes of people who were not registered to vote. C, officially recording vote counts, pre-written results on the palm of a hand that likely did not have been reflected in the number of raised hands in the room. C, the use of the Clinton campaign for out-of-state precinct captain caught posing as an Iowa resident in the Iowa caucuses. D, Clinton receiving delegates from coin tosses where she would have lost the delegates if the rules say the winner of the toss loses the delegate. But on the videos, when she won the toss, the other side lost either the delegates in violation of the laws, or E, ordering the Sanders people to leave before the votes were counted. Counting machines supplied by one of Clinton's campaign donors were used instead of live counters in places in Iowa, according to a call from an Iowa chairman to the Sanders campaign. In some caucuses, they didn't even keep track of the vote count, meaning the end result might be completely inaccurate. These are realities in reference to hotly contested states in the Democratic caucuses, for the primaries leading to the convention, Democratic National Convention, to determine who is going to be the nominee of the Democratic Party in the election for President of the United States. This is an incredibly important election, and these things are happening apparently throughout the nation. No one is actually taking any of these things seriously. It is said that investigations are progressing, but what investigations are actually taking place if 100,000 people sign their name to a pledge demanding that they be looked into in the state of Massachusetts, and nothing happens? This is the primary problem. But there are even greater problems. The problem that Hillary Clinton systematically lies. She has no intention of speaking the truth. She has no intention of giving her opinion clear. She has no intention of anything except to win the election. And here's an example of this type of behavior.
Sex marriage, now you're for it. You defended President Obama's immigration policies. Now you say they're too harsh. You supported his trade deal dozens of times. You can call it the gold standard. Now suddenly last week you're against it. Will you say anything to get elected?
Well, actually, I've been very consistent over the course of my entire life. I have always fought for the same values and principles.
Do you think New York State should recognize gay marriage?
No.
No. Okay.
I believe that marriage is not just a bond, but a sacred bond between a man and a woman. I have not supported same-sex marriage. I've supported civil partnerships and contractual relationships.
I support marriage for lesbian and gay couples. I support it personally and as a matter of policy and law.
So you're saying your opinion on gay marriage changed, or you changed your mind? I have to say, I think you are very persistent, but you are playing with my words and playing with what is such a... I'm just trying to clarify so I can understand. No, I don't think you are trying to clarify. I think you're trying to say that, I used to be opposed and now I'm in favor, and I did it for political reasons, and that's just flat wrong. So let me just state what I feel like you are implying and repudiate it. I have a strong record. I have a great commitment to this issue, and I am proud of what I've done and the progress we're making.
I'm sorry, I just want to clarify what I was saying. No, I was saying that you maybe really believe this all along, but, believe in gay marriage all
since America wasn't ready yet and you couldn't say it. That's what I was saying.
No, that is not true. It really is great how long you've supported gay marriage.
Yes. I could have supported it sooner.
Well, you did it pretty soon.
Could have been sooner.
Fair point.
Just in July, New Hampshire, you told the crowd you, quote, take a backseat to no one when it comes to progressive values.
I take a backseat to no one when you look at my record as standing up and fighting for progressive values.
Last month in Ohio, you said you plead guilty to, quote, being kind of moderate and center. Do you change your political identity based on who you're talking to?
No, I think that, like most people that I know, I have a range of views, but they are rooted in my values and my experience.
You know, I get accused of being kind of moderate and centered. I plead guilty.
Just for the record, are you a progressive or are you a moderate?
I'm a progressive.
Going through the emails, there were over 60,000 in total sent and received. About half were work-related and went to the State Department, and about half were personal, that were not in any way related to my work.
When you speak to the public, you say, I turned over everything. That's, for the most part, a direct quote. When you talk to the public, you say, I turned over everything.
90 to 95% of my work-related emails were in the state system. If they wanted to see them, they would certainly have been able to.
You know what? That is maybe the 10th time you have cited that figure today.
It is.
And I have not heard anyone other than you ever cite that figure. Who told you that 90 to 95% of your emails were in the State Department system? Who told you that?
We learned that from the State Department in their analysis of the emails that were already on the system.
The Inspector General report found that less than 1% of State Department emails, record emails, were captured. So they give a number of less than 1%, and you give a number of 90%.
I have absolute confidence that everything that could be in any way connected to work is now in the possession of the State Department.
This file represents the emails that you sent or received about Libya in 2011, from February through December of 2011. This file represents the emails you sent or received from early 2012 until the day of the attack. There are 795 emails in this file. We've counted them. There are 67 emails in this file in 2012. And I'm troubled by what I see here. I can only conclude by your own records that there was a lack of interest in Libya in 2012.
So the reality of what we see by Clinton is exactly this problem. The problem is not that Hillary Clinton lies. It's not just that Hillary Clinton lies, or that she lies continually, or that she lies indiscriminately, or that she lies just to benefit her audience. The problem is that she has lied, and that has lied to the State Department in reference to the incredible number of perhaps highly secret information on her server. That she may be distributing this information, selling this information, flaunting this information, providing this information to foreign governments as Secretary of State, and that the State Department or that the Republican Party would be interested in preventing her from becoming President of the United States by having her indicted. We would like to thank, at this point, CNN, basically, for providing this video material. But the problem is gigantic. The problem is Clinton blocks, or potentially blocks, her opponent, wins the nomination, and then is indicted by the State Department because the Republican Party has convinced key members of the State Department or the indictment end of the Obama administration to indict Hillary Clinton. This is a possibility. And because she's indicted, then she may not be able to either take part in the campaign or be prohibited from taking part in campaign election efforts. This is a serious, serious crisis. It's a crisis because we know that the Republican nomination may be won by Donald Trump. We know, basically, what to expect from Donald Trump. We know, for instance, that he's a bully, that he's misogynistic, that he's a bigot, that he hates particular members of particular religions simply because they're of that religion, that he's engaged at the moment in a juvenile rant with Ted Cruz in reference to questions of such a low moral caliber and such a embarrassing situation regarding their wives and regarding pictures taken of their wives in the nude. This is for those fundamentalists of Christian value. It must be a complete nightmare. But believe me, at this position, we'd like to make clear that the idea of Christian values and voting for a right-wing candidate may be two entirely different subject matters. We're calling here at this position for an end to these types of political maneuvering here in the United States. We're calling for an end of Hillary Clinton's manipulation of the truth, of her systematic lying against or for any position that she feels would benefit her with a particular audience. And the reason for that is clear. The voters have a right to know what positions the president or the future nominee for the presidency of the United States, what position they actually have. And by lying or by changing their position according to the audience that Clinton is speaking to, makes it impossible to actually know what type of position she will take as president. And that is not the idea of either the debates which take place, or the campaigns, or campaign promises, or getting to know the candidates. This is entirely different. This is a candidate lying systematically in order to win votes. And as we've mentioned in our position at the beginning of our show, and we'll return to this now, disenfranchisement of millions of voters. In states where Clinton did well, there was one thing those states had in common, and that was that the disenfranchisement of large percentage of voters. In Ohio, roughly 90% of 17-year-olds who were eligible to vote were not allowed to vote. More than 85% of those who were pro-Sanders voters and enough to change the results and give Sanders the Ohio candidates, the Ohio primary victory. There was an attempt to stop 100% of those voters, so the examination continues, from voting, but a decision reached shortly before the election said that they had to be allowed to vote. Because the decision came too late to allow them to register for the primaries, the vast majority were not allowed to vote in any case. In Illinois, they ran out of ballots and significant numbers of voters were turned away. 17-year-olds were not allowed to vote in places because of supposed computer glitches. The difference, again, would have been enough to give Sanders the victory by a wide margin. In the Deep South and old Confederate states, millions of voters were disenfranchised because of voter ID laws, being on lists, often incorrect lists of those who were allowed to vote. Because of polls closing early, because of being refused Democratic ballots, and because of machine errors. In the old Confederacy, nobody can claim that the blacks supported Clinton because more than 40% of black males were not allowed to vote as a result of Clinton's mass incarceration program. That's Bill Clinton's mass incarceration program, as he was president of the United States. But that wasn't all that went into the disenfranchisement. Here are some of the examples from the South. In Georgia, where the paperless debolt machines regularly flip election results, Sanders supporters could not find Sanders' name on the ballot in key precincts that were not allowed to vote and were not allowed to vote for him. An attorney for Sanders' campaign is currently demanding that these situations receive some type of legal repercussions. In Florida alone, the documented 3 million voters were disenfranchised. Adding that to one county, their poll workers sent Democratic voters home, telling them that it was not election day for Democrats. Later, Democratic ballots were found in the cabinet. In North Carolina, 218,000 eligible voters were disenfranchised because of the voter ID laws requiring specific IDs. Most of these were millennials who would have voted for Sanders because millennials get Sanders. That's enough for enough votes to have given Sanders landslide victory in North Carolina. In some places, voters were simply turned away due to the lack of ballots. This is a crisis in our democratic system. It's a crisis because of the widespread abuse and use of voter fraud, disenfranchisement, and the use of political maneuvering to prevent normal voting at polling places, as we documented here in Massachusetts by Bill Clinton and his entourage and Marty Walsh, city mayor of the city of Boston. We here at this position are calling upon an investigation and possible criminal charges. We reiterate, it could be the idea of the Republican Party and maneuvering in Congress, in the Senate, in the House, and in the office of the Secretary General to indict Hillary Clinton should she get the nomination of the Democratic Party. The idea would then be she would be indicted and under investigation and may not even be allowed either to campaign or to accept the presidency because of the indictment. And the indictment would be selling information to, selling secret or security related information to individuals in foreign governments. And because these informations, thousands, tens of thousands, 30,000 100,000 emails were stored on a server. It could be that these accusations would actually be true and lead to her conviction. Thanks for joining us on this Easter Sunday. And we hope that a change in this political climate will take place. Good evening. So that's the information we have from today. Thanks for joining us here for that part of our program. The reality of our this part of our roll-in, that's a term we use here at the studio, meaning part of the show which has been pre-recorded, and it then rolls in to the program taking place. This pre-recording was done, as was mentioned by the speaker, on Easter Sunday. The reality of the distortions by Hillary Clinton as captured on interviews by CNN, also part of that documentation, shows that Clinton lies systematically to anyone asking her a question so that the audience hearing her response hears what she believes that audience wants to hear. So Clinton is not being interviewed so that her actual reasons or convictions are to be known. Clinton speaks as though she were able to say anything, and that whatever she says can be accepted as being the position that she has always had. That's ridiculous. Everyone has a record of what they have said, what they have stood for, whether or not they have a past which is favorable or disfavorable, whether or not one was married, divorced, employed, unemployed, in jail, under indictment, at the radio station, etc. Hillary Clinton is clearly of the belief that she is above the law, that it makes no difference what she's done in the past, that she can say anything she wants, and that the public is to accept that which she says as true. It's not the case. She has a past. She has a record. She has a long political record dating back to being the first lady in the state of Arkansas in the 1980s. We're talking about 40 years ago. Clinton is not starting in politics. Clinton has had 35 to 40 years of horrifically poor political record. She had a stint of at least 3 years, perhaps 4, as foreign minister, as Secretary of State for the Obama administration. A disastrous record. She solved in the Middle East absolutely no problems. After she left, the bombing of Syria continued. The ISIS continued their campaigns in Iraq and Syria. The fighting, the refugee crisis came to a head with 3 to 5 million refugees fleeing Syria. What the fuck did Hillary Clinton do to solve any of these problems? She didn't. She didn't solve any of the problems as Secretary of State. She didn't create a climate in which the problems could be solved. Why would Clinton think that she has a record saying that she could be President of the United States. President of the United States should be someone who can at least implement change to solve problems. Should be someone who has experience in negotiation, in creating a climate of trust so that problems can be solved. Clinton has none of these. Clinton, even in the administrative questions, is involved in serious problems with the FBI regarding her email server. Clinton has a record. Should she get the Democratic nomination, she will be embroiled in one discussion after another by the Republican Party, whoever the Republican candidate is, even if the Republican candidate and the horrific idea that the Republican candidate would be Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio, and that the independent candidate would be even more horrifically the apprentice chief, the Donald, who would then be running as an independent, and a Ted Cruz running in the Republican Party. This nightmare is a real chance. It's a real chance because there are billions of dollars to be spent on this election. It wasn't necessary in 2000. In 2000, the Democratic Party freely gave up their discussion, their right to get the Democratic nomination, to win the popular vote, to win the Electoral College vote, but allowed a discussion to go on so that the Supreme Court felt an absolute unprecedented scandal, that the Supreme Court, with Scalia, the notorious Antonin Scalia, that's a story entirely different. According to the Texas state laws, if someone dies under any type of mysterious conditions, an autopsy is automatically to be initiated. Scalia died in a retreat under incredibly mysterious circumstances. He wasn't ill. There was no reason for him to die. No one was called. No documentation was given as to his cause of death. There is absolutely no reason to believe that his death was above board. He is the ranking individual on the Supreme Court, completely in the pocket of the Republican Party. Why would the Republicans not file for an investigation? Why would that be the case? Why has there been no investigation required by Texas law to have an autopsy on Antonin Scalia? Absolutely ridiculous. We are living in a continual and unending crisis in the United States. This is not my opinion. It's got nothing whatsoever to do with my opinion. What would my opinion have to do with reality? We can see the goddamn fucking reality breaking out in every corner of this nation. Every conceivable corner. Donald Trump as potential president of the United States, this is the most incredible joke you have ever heard. He's a misogynist. He hates women. That's clear. That's been documented on television through his statements time and time again. He's a bigot. He hates different races. He's called Mexicans rapists and criminals. Mexicans. He's called the entire nation of Mexico rapists. He's deformed and defied the entire nation of Islam. We're talking about almost 1.5 billion individuals on the planet, calling them terrorists. Now, anyone who knows an individual, can estimate the fact of whether or not they're respectable persons. But that comes prior to the knowledge of what religion they have. It would be like calling the Buddhists terrorists. Now, does anyone in the goddamn United States even have an idea who a Buddhist is? Does anyone know what a Buddhist looks like? What a Buddhist thinks? How a Buddhist acts? What a Buddhist does? What principles he lives by? No. So why would it be possible? Why would anyone, including Donald Trump or any other idiot, think that it's possible to defame an entire spiritual group? This is the stand of our nation today in 2016 before the election. Imagine what kind of a crisis we're in if Donald Trump is elected, or Hillary Clinton is elected, or Ted Cruz is nominated by the Republican Party in a contested convention. And Donald Trump is rallied around by 26 billionaires in the United States who flood the entire nation with an unending stream of documentations indicting with lies, with conjured up material, with faked interviews, with impersonators giving interviews, looking like the candidates. What are we talking about? We're talking about the United States in 2016. We're talking about a nation that is in political, social, moral, economic disintegration. This is not my idea. This is a sensible analysis of the reality. Why would this be a sensible analysis? Because of Donald Trump, because of what he stands for, because he's a front runner in the Republican Party, because all of the candidates in the Republican Party have said they are going to support whoever gets the nomination of the Republican Party. That would be, at this moment, Donald Trump. Who could stop Donald Trump? Hillary Clinton? Hillary Clinton may be under indictment by the Attorney General of the United States for selling information from her server regarding passages, emails, interviews, insights, confessions on that server regarding individuals in foreign nations, that these nations want to be able to know about in advance so they can change the political reality. Pay hush money, bribes, get people out of the countries, commit political assassinations, change documents, etc. Are we living in the 1300s? Do we not recognize what political scandals have taken place in the last 2,500 years in the world? How much experience there is in reference to how to doctor someone's reputation, how to indict someone, how to assassinate someone, how to impugn their reputation? Of course, this is not something that we have to think about. Machiavelli, in the Reformation, in 1506, wrote a dissertation called The Prince. That's all you need to read. I suppose it's time to apologize to the listeners for conducting this type of discussion on Square Root Day. Today is 4/4/2016, as was previously Square Root Day 3/3/2009, as in the future 9/9/2081. But I personally am skeptical that we in the United States will get through the next 50 years without a major political crisis in the form of a totalitarian takeover. Why? Because of the lack of political will on the political class, due to the lack of initiative of the majority of people of the United States in exercising their rights to free speech, to freedom of assembly, to freedom of the press, to freedom to demand the redress of grievances. In short, the failure of the conviction of the majority of the people of the United States that the Bill of Rights applies to them, applies to every individual in this nation. Why am I saying this? I'm saying this because I'm speaking to you from Cambridge Community Television, and I can exercise, I see here at the station that rights are continually being threatened and jeopardized and rescinded. I've experienced being jailed. I've experienced in my own person having my legal rights jeopardized in the military. In the military, the freedom of speech is not taken away from members of the military. That goes back to the Nuremberg decisions in the end of the Second World War. Every individual in uniform has the right to object to a lawful order. Lawful, meaning regardless of what someone in the military is told, one has the right, according to the US decisions at Nuremberg, to refuse that order and to object to the demand that they follow that order. Here's the conclusion of and the summary of our statement today. We here at What We Should Know and Peace Worker Radio are calling upon every individual in the state of Massachusetts to file a complaint at the local courthouse against Mayor Marty Walsh, Bill Clinton, and Hillary Clinton for conspiracy to steal the primary in Massachusetts 2016. It's not difficult to do, and in many cases it doesn't cost anything. We'll get to that in a moment. The complaint can be documented by anyone of legal age and can be supported by any other individual in Massachusetts who wants to become a party to that complaint. Registered at a courthouse. The courthouse is absolutely required to take this complaint and to rule upon the complaint itself. It's not that they say, no courthouse has the right to say, we can't take that complaint. In Massachusetts, every courthouse is required to take the complaint that is filed. Everyone. If they don't take that, ask to speak to the clerk of courts and explain to the clerk of courts that you're interested in filing a complaint against Marty Walsh, Bill Clinton, and Hillary Rodham Clinton for obstruction of the primary election in Massachusetts. You have a right to file this complaint, and anyone interested in supporting you can become party to that complaint. When you file this, it can be filed simply handwritten. The clerk of courts will instruct you on how to do this. Any fees that are to be levied, you can ask to be waived. The court has to rule on whether or not the fees are to be waived. They have to rule on this. They have to tell you in a ruling by a judge that the fees are waived or the fees are not waived. If the fees are not waived, in other words, that fees are required, it's possible to ask for the reason why fees are required. The request is that every individual in the state of Massachusetts who feels that their rights were violated in the primary here in Massachusetts has the right to file a complaint at any courthouse in the state of Massachusetts, and that the courthouse is required to accept this complaint and to have a judge rule on this complaint.
Because I want to be a good